Where do people go when they die? Emilie had been asking herself that question all the way on the plane from Ottawa to Winnipeg. Or rather, where was her biological mother now? As she got into the backseat of the car that was taking her to Fort La Reine Museum, she let herself drift back to her thoughts. The ride was going to take another hour or so from Winnipeg Airport, and to Emilie's relief, the driver didn't seem to be the talkative type. The last few months had been overwhelming. She had always known that she was adopted. Marion, her adoptive grandmother, and who was the woman who had raised her, had told her as soon as she could. Emilie had never felt like she was missing anything by growing up in her unconventional family of only her and her grandmother. There was only a short time during her high school years she had been curious and asked more questions. Her and Marion had started looking into who Emilie's mother might be, but the adoptive agency hadn't been too helpful, and Emilie soon lost interest. Emilie guessed she was one of those thousands of children born to mothers who were not more than children themselves, who did not have the support systems nor the money to take care of a child. It had been a shock when one day, back in March, when Emilie was right in the middle of her midterms in history, that her biological mother suddenly had appeared on their doorstep. Emilie had been at home when the doorbell rang, and, ignoring it at first, trying to stay focused on her studies. But the person outside was persistent, and eventually Emilie went to open the door. She gasped when she suddenly was looking straight into her own face, only marked by a mature woman's traces. The woman on the doorstep didn't even have to say it. Emilie knew this was her mother. Emilie had invited her mother, Catherine, for tea, and they had seated themselves in the garden, as per Catherine's suggestion. It was a beautiful early spring day, but Emilie had wrapped herself in a blanket against the cold. Catherine had kindly declined the offer of a blanket, even though she was only wearing a dress, and told Emilie that a day in March in Ottawa was nothing compared to a March day in Winnipeg, that her Manitoba blood kept her warm. Emilie felt that she should have 1,000 questions, but they hadn't said much during the first meeting. Catherine asked if Emilie had any travels planned in the near future. Emilie hadn't, and she thought that maybe Catherine was going to ask her to come and visit. But Catherine never did. Soon the sun set behind the buildings, and a light drizzle began. Catherine excused herself and said it was time for her to leave. They agreed to meet again in a month when Emilie's exams were done. If Emilie had known, she would have hugged her mother when she left, just to know what it would have felt like. But at that time, Catherine still felt like a stranger, and they only nodded as a goodbye. Catherine's flowing dress leaving a scent of spring rain behind her. During the busy month of exams, Emilie found out the great news that she had gotten the assistant position at Fort La Reine Museum that she had applied for earlier in the year. What a coincidence that her biological mother was from there. Emilie was excited to tell Catherine about her new position and looked forward to their next meeting. The day came, but Catherine was nowhere to be found. After a couple of more weeks, Emilie managed to get a hold of the adoptive agency. "Your mother," the agent said. "I'm sorry to let you know, but she died in a car accident." Emilie couldn't believe it. She had just met her biological mother, and now fate had ripped them apart again. "We're here," the driver says, and Emilie snaps out of her thoughts. "Are you sure they're here?" The driver continues. "It looks pretty dark." "Yeah," Emilie says. "They told me they would be here tonight to put up Halloween decorations and show me around. They'll give me a ride to Portage La Prairie after." The gravel crunches under Emilie's feet as she walks up to the entrance. The door is open and the light is on at the ticket booth. "Hello?" There's no one in the office, and Emilie makes her way through the exhibition, fascinated by the detailed descriptions of the area. She feels happy that she will be working with such knowledgeable and creative people. Suddenly, she hears a door slam. "Hello?" Emilie calls again. She walks through the building and exits the back door. She gasps in wonder when she sees the heritage village that has been built up. The buildings are lit up by the little bit of sunshine that's left. She immediately recognizes some of the buildings from her research. There's Paul's house, the general store, and further away, the West Prospect Church. Emilie walks around in awe. She enters the schoolhouse, its old door creaking when she opens it. She hears voices from the classroom. "Hi, I'm Emilie, the assistant. I knew I'd find you somewhere," she laughs. But when she turns the corner, the schoolroom is empty. Must have been the wind, she thinks. She squeezes herself down in a bench attached to one of the old school desks, looking around the room. There are old educational posters around the room, wilting at the edges. Suddenly, she sees a shadow in the corner of her eye, a person standing in the doorway to the classroom. But when Emilie turns, the person disappears, this door to the schoolhouse slamming behind them. "Hey," Emilie calls. "Wait!" She struggles to get up from the bench, hitting her knee on the desk. "Oh!" Emilie runs out from the schoolhouse. It's only just past 6:30 in the evening, but the museum grounds are already dark. An encompassing darkness that can only be felt in desolated countryside of northern altitudes. "Where are you?" Emilie calls, feeling her frustration growing. What has so far been an exciting exploration of her new workplace is now starting to feel more like an exhausting hide-and-seek game. "Are you doing this on purpose?" she calls as she walks around the grounds with the help of the flashlight on her phone. "Is this some kind of initiation ceremony for new employees?" She hears someone laughing and runs towards the sound. Emilie is now at the end of the grounds, and the laughter comes from inside a big white house. She knows that she has read about this house but can't remember its name. The door is wide open, and Emilie enters. Bam! The door has slammed shut behind her. By surprise, Emilie drops her phone and everything goes dark. Shit! She fumbles in the darkness trying to find her phone. Even though it's already pitch black, Emilie suddenly feels an even stronger darkness descending over her. "Stop it!" she yells. "It's not funny anymore." But she knows now it's not her future co-workers playing games with her. This is something darker. Something dead. Emilie stumbles to the door and tries with all her powers to push it open, but it is as if something is blocking it. An intelligible whisper behind her makes shivers down her spine. The whispers grow louder and louder until... "Emilie," she hears. "Help!" Emilie screams. "Help me!" Her voice getting choked by tears. "Emilie, don't go." Suddenly, the door opens from the outside. It's the driver. "Hey," he says. "I went into Portage La Prairie to have a bite to eat and saw your co-workers there. They thought you were coming tomorrow, so I turned around to get you." "Are you all right?" Emilie swallows. "Yeah, sure." She looks back into the dark room. Squinting, she tries to make out shapes in the darkness, but sees nothing. "Let's go," says the driver. As Emilie turns to follow, she smells a soft scent of wet soil, like the scent of spring rain. Back in the car, Emilie leans her head against the window. She's suddenly exhausted. She just wants to be back in her own bed in Ottawa, in her familiar surroundings. Maybe she should never had agreed to come here. As they pull out of the parking lot, Emilie looks back at the museum grounds. And then she sees her. It's a shape of a woman in a flowing dress. The woman is running, her hands outstretched, as if trying to reach the car, as if trying to stop them. Emilie screams, and the driver turns his head looking back, not seeing the oncoming car. You just heard the story about the hauntings of Fort La Reine, a museum where haunted buildings from across Manitoba have been brought to their final resting place.
From the Ghost Next Door podcast. Should we take that again?
Yes.
This is Sally Chachich
And Sarah Matson.
from the Ghost Next Door.
So we would like to welcome Kelly Parent-Smith and Ashley Barnes, who are co-owners and lead investigators at Winnipeg Paranormal Group in the province of Manitoba, Canada. So this is very exciting for us, as we have wanted to interview paranormal experts for a really long time. So thank you for joining us. To start, could you please tell us a bit about your group, Winnipeg Paranormal, and the work that you do?
Okay, Winnipeg Paranormal Group is it's made up of we have a team of believers and skeptics. We go into mostly private residences. People contact us because they suspect that there may be something spiritual, paranormal going on in their home. I liken us to more of like the Ghost Hunters show, where we go in with different equipment, and because we don't want to rely on just our feelings, we're trying to get concrete evidence for our clients. We also do public events, like public investigations and things like that, to educate people about what we do, what's out there, and to help people feel more comfortable talking about these things.
So that's wonderful. So what exactly is it that you do when you investigate a private home? What kind of equipment do you take with you?
Wow. Whatever equipment we we have. Ashley and I are going poor buying all of these things, but there's a lot of different gadgets out there. I mean, you can really do investigating with just like your phone and some video cameras and things like that. But like we have a lot of fun gadgets out there. We used a ghost box. We use all the different kinds of K2 meters. We have a DVR system so that someone can look at the monitor while we set up video cameras in the room. If you've seen it on TV shows, we most likely have it. There's all kinds of unique things out there and it's all about experimenting to see if it's can be explained away as like a real world explanation, or something beyond that we can't quite explain. And that's what we're always looking for. Either way, we want to help the client to feel more comfortable in their home so that they can sleep at night.
Is the ghost box the device where you can speak with the ghost through radio signals?
It is. It's a really fun tool. People either love it or hate it, I find.
So you have all these gadgets and tools, and what would you say is proof of a paranormal phenomenon?
For me, it's when we get corresponding answers across multiple devices. So like Kelly was saying, we don't go in with just one piece of equipment. So we're looking for validation across multiple ones. So if we're getting the answer on the ghost box, is our cat balls lighting up? Is the REM pod going off? Is K2 going off? Can we validate it in other ways other than just with that one piece of equipment?
Yeah, that makes sense. And recently you had an investigation at Fort La Reine Museum, which we
just heard the story about. Could you tell us a bit about that investigations and your finds?
Well, we did find that a lot of the groups had similar experiences across, in the same locations. So we had a lot of responses of like being watched that came across some of our devices. We're watching you. Um, a lot of our attendees got touched in a particular house.
Was that the case house?
That was the Burton house.
Oh.
Yeah. In my group particular, we had 6 women sitting around a table, and every time a man, one of the male attendees, came into the room, over the ghost box very clearly, it would say, "Keep going." And when we spoke to the curator, when we spoke to Emma about it, she said, "Oh yeah, that's a common experience, that men are not really welcome in that house and women are quite enjoyed."
Oh,
It pleases me no end to hear that the ghosts are feminists.
so at Fort La Reine Museum, there are several locations that you can say are haunted or have these phenomenon.
Yeah, I would say that there is significant activity in many of those locations, even the ones that we didn't go into for the public. We're actually planning to do a private investigation there because there is so much activity. It's a pretty fascinating place. We've been trying to get in there for years, and I mean, I've heard a lot of stories through the years that it was haunted. So
Yeah, I mean, I was there last year with a group of people, and one person in our group, she actually had an experience when she went into a house. I can't remember the name of the house, but we were alone because it hadn't opened the actual museum yet. But she went into this house and she heard laughing children, and she was very surprised to hear children because there was no one there, and that was her experience. I went into the same house later on, but I didn't unfortunately have an experience. So it seems like a place that is quite haunted.
Can you tell us about your favorite experience there in terms of any encounters you had with the supernatural?
Well, for me, I think it was the story I was telling you, where we had all the women coming around the table, and the men were not welcome. We found it absolutely hilarious. Um, and at the same time, while that was going on, we could also see a shadow in the hallway that was kind of like poking around the corners and looking in on us. But I think any experience that we could validate with Emma was absolutely incredible for us.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, most definitely. Like I thought it was interesting that we got the same answer that you guys, our group had the watching you, the same exact place that you did,
Mhm.
and we had no idea. It came across on one of our devices, and in one of the rooms where they have like the little the doll in the baby carriage, the ball kept lighting up, and it was interacting with one of the people in my group. So I thought that was pretty neat.
That's interesting because I did see a television episode with another group of ghost hunters that were in the same location, and they had a very similar experience with the crib and their device lighting up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it. There's something attached to some of those things in the house, definitely.
Well, that's an interesting thought. Do you think that the things that are attached, are they attached to the actual location, the home itself, the walls, or do you think they're attached to the items that were possessed by these people when they were alive?
I don't think we look at it so much as possessions. I think it's leaving that energy behind. So a lot of it is that we experience is energy
Mm-hmm.
more than anything. And I think there's definitely something that's either attached to the place or maybe even just the land. We seem to experience that a lot.
I think it's both. Like, I think that there's something to the land as well as something
Mhm.
to the individual houses, because everything was moved there, right? Like, nothing that isn't the original location of any of the buildings. So I think it's a mixture of both. There's something attached to either the houses or the items in there, as well as there's something from that land.
And as paranormal experts, what are your thoughts about these phenomena? If ghosts and spirits are real, why do you think they make themselves known in this way?
That's a long explanation.
Was a big rabbit hole.
Where do I start?
You have the time.
I think one of the main reasons is they're looking for attention. They haven't had anything. They can't communicate regularly like you and I are communicating, and they're trying to find ways that they're able to communicate. They've been ignored, and yeah, they're. I think they're just looking for a way to let us know that they're here. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, we've had different experiences in the why. Sometimes we get strange answers over our equipment. I actually investigated a place back in Massachusetts where I'm from, and the woman, the owner of the house, who I've known since I was a kid, she was actually having dreams, and her deceased husband kept coming into the dream telling her to go into the garage and check her car because his old Jaguar was in there, and she never drove it anymore because she's a lot older and she didn't drive. So she finally told her son, she's like, I think that your dad wants me to look into the garage, and it has something to do with the car. And then when he went into the garage, he started looking around and realized that the garage ceiling was going to collapse on the car.
Wow.
So her husband was actually sending messages like, that's my baby, that's my car, it's about to get destroyed. So so hearing stories like that, and you realize that there are different various reasons why people experience this phenomena. Sometimes they're trying to get our attention, sometimes they're trying to send messages. Sometimes, if they have like a violent death, they may not even realize that they're gone, or maybe just distraught and not knowing where they are or where they should go.
On a personal level, I'm curious, do you think that everyone sort of transitions into this place, or is it just people who have experienced trauma? What do you think is the difference between those that cross over and those that stay?
For me, my opinion is it's a personal choice. They want to stay or they want to cross over.
Well, we have talked a bit about Fort La Reine Museum, which we now know is definitely worth a visit because of all the interesting experiences people have had there. Do you have any other places in Manitoba that you have had experiences and would like to tell us about?
A lot.
Where to begin?
Your group works all around Manitoba and do investigations all around.
We do, yes. Yeah. And we're quite busy, like all year round. We're quite busy with just like private investigations. But we used to do quite a bit of public investigations at the Seven Oaks Museum. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but there was quite a bit of activity in there as well that we had experienced, and that other people would come in and experience, and to the point that people had to walk outside of the house, and it affected them so much.
Yeah, we turned a lot of skeptics into believers at that house.
We did. And that's not something that we're aiming for. We're not here to prove anything to anyone. It kind of happens on its own.
Yeah.
And we've also recently been having public events at the St. James Museum as well, right on Portage.
Yeah, that one's been an interesting location as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do investigations outside of Manitoba as well?
We do.
So we just got back from Thunder Bay, where we were able to investigate an amazing old theater. We've also investigated in Kenora.
We've been to so many places, and we've investigated in Michigan as well.
Yeah.
Because of all these investigations that you've done all over, do you feel like Manitoba is a especially haunted province?
Definitely. As Kelly was said, we've investigated, with friends down in the States, and we have other investigators across the US, and they're always surprised at how many investigations we have. I mean, we can be up to 2 private investigations a month, and it's quite busy here.
Why do you think that is?
Huh. I have a few theories. Maybe it's because I'm from the States, so I notice a difference in Winnipeg or in Manitoba than down in the States. I feel like people are more comfortable talking about these things in this province compared to other places. I mean, we do smudging in schools, so we do talk about spirituality a lot. It seems to be common in the culture here, which I love, and I've learned a lot about different cultures since I moved here. So I think it's something that's more of a second nature type of thing for people here, that they're just like, well, it could be the spirit of so and so, and it's like everyday conversation here. But if you say that to somebody where I'm from, they look at you like, are you okay? Should you be talking to someone? There's still, in places, there is still a stigma attached to it. But here, people are very comfortable with, I think, for the most part, I don't know, you can agree or disagree with me, but I think people are much more comfortable talking about it here.
I think if you also look at the physical parts of Winnipeg and Manitoba in itself, right? Like, we have a lot of ley lines that join up in Manitoba. We have the limestone underneath of us. We have the forks, right? We have 2 major rivers that run right through Winnipeg. We were the railroad city basically when Winnipeg was developed, so we have major railroads that run through Canada, or through Winnipeg as well. And all of those can contribute to energies and spirits, coming and going through Winnipeg as well.
Fascinating. Well, as we wrap up, we have a bit of a bonus question for you. If someone believed that they had some supernatural phenomena happening in their personal home and they couldn't afford to bring out the Winnipeg Paranormals, what would you suggest that they do to help them either communicate or release these ghosts?
Well, first of all, we don't charge for our investigations. So if somebody needs us, they can contact us at any time. But if they're wanting to try to remove stuff themselves, the first thing we always suggest is either getting your house blessed or smudging it, getting it cleansed. It really depends upon your religion. You want to follow that and what your beliefs are. So, set your boundaries, make sure that whatever is there knows that this is your home and you're in charge.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We really appreciate all your knowledge and that you wanted to share your experiences with us.
Thank you for inviting us.
This was episode 1 of season 2, The Hauntings of Fort La Reine, performed by Sarah Matson. This story is a creative reimagining inspired by the hauntings at Fort La Reine Museum in Manitoba, Canada, written by Sarah Matson. This episode features an interview with Kelly Parent-Smith and Ashley Barnes, who are co-owners and lead investigators at Winnipeg Paranormal Group in the province of Manitoba, Canada. You can find us on YouTube and all your favorite podcast platforms. Please support us by subscribing and following us on social media at Ghost Next Door Podcast. Our next haunting episode will be released in November 2024. Happy Halloween!